Good afternoon, everyone. Just letting you know we are recording on eScribe and streaming on YouTube.
Awesome, thank you. I think we've got 2 more minutes, so I'll just wait for people to trickle in.
Heidi, I've made you a co-host.
Perfect, thank you. All right, it's 12:40, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I think we barely have a quorum, but I'm sure more people will be straggling in as we start this meeting. So if we could go ahead and start with the roll call. Yeah, let's start there.
Okay. Give me just 1 minute. All right. Anderson? Absent. Becerra?
Present.
Carlino?
Present.
Contos?
Here.
S?
He's absent.
Absent. Jones? Absent.
She'll
Jordan?
be trickling in, I'm sure.
Oh, okay, perfect. Jordan?
Present.
Nugent?
Present.
Savage? Absent. Cheryl?
Present.
Basika?
Present.
West?
Present. And I am the last person on the list. So without any objections, our minutes from June 8th will be approved. And I just want to note for the record that the only person in attendance right now is Ricky Henderson, who is staff at the City of Missoula. So there is no additional public to comment on non-agenda items. So we'll go ahead and move on to the first item of business, which is an appointment to the Public Art Committee, which is the mayor's appointment, and he will not be joining us today. So Mirta is going to introduce this item on his behalf.
Thank you. I would like to start by thanking Mia Panic for wanting to serve on the Public Art Committee. If you haven't looked at her resume, it's quite impressive. We're lucky to have someone with the breadth of experience that she brings forward. She has had multiple jobs dealing with arts and public art throughout this country and abroad. So I am grateful for her wanting to serve on this committee, and certainly will bring expertise that will serve Missoula well when it comes to acquiring and promoting and maintaining our public art inventory. So with that, I would like to move I move that we confirm the mayor's appointment of Mia Hannock to the Public Art Committee for a term beginning July 1st, 2022 and expiring on June 30th, 2026.
Thank you. That's an order. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this item? It doesn't look like it. I don't believe that there is any public that would for this item. So we'll go ahead and move to a roll call vote.
Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Basika,
Yes.
and West.
Yes. And I just wanted to add that Gwen just joined us. Hi, Gwen. So that with that, we'll move on to the second item on our agenda, which is a tax credit application by Homeward for the Creekside Apartments. And Emily Harris Shears is here to speak about this item.
Hi again. I'm really happy to be here and appreciate the time. Thanks for having us this afternoon. So today we're sharing an item in partnership with Homeward for the Creekside apartment homes. And Homeward is applying for the Montana housing tax credits to provide necessary rehabilitation to the apartment complex and preserve the dedicated use as income restricted housing for an additional period of affordability of 46 years. There are three primary ways. Oh, actually, I'm going to share my screen if that's all right. Getting settled. So there are three primary ways that we, oh gosh, sorry, I'm all in my screens. Here we
We
go.
can see your application or your presentation now.
You can, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to move it though. So there are, sorry, I want to move it. I can't do that. Sorry for the technical challenge.
So now we can see like a couple of your windows.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. All right.
I'm
Well,
impressed. I can't do this part, so.
Well, neither can I, apparently. Oh, here we go. Thanks for the patience. So there are three primary ways to add income and use restricted housing to our portfolio. This is a super timely discussion and presentation after the meeting we just had. And so I wanted to highlight before I turn it over to Heather that, new construction and acquisition add units that were not previously in the portfolio, and preservation protects units and resources that have already been in the portfolio, are nearing their period of affordability expiration. And it's not uncommon for buildings or units at the time of preservation to need rehabilitation or work to continue to preserve that appropriate and safe habitability. I know we've just participated in a really fruitful discussion recently, literally 20 minutes ago, about periods of affordability and the desire to explore longer periods of affordable than the current policy at the community development level of 35 years. And the timing of this discussion and this presentation from Homeward is just so lucky because this project highlights the necessity for ongoing investment and caretaking of dedicated units with the provision of an extended affordability period of affordability. And the item before you includes a motion to hold a public hearing for July 25th of 2022, which will meet the state of Montana's public hearing requirement for tax credit applications and provide an avenue to hear community perspectives and input on whether Creekside and the proposed rehabilitation meets a community need. There is not an ask for council to endorse this project currently beyond voting to hold the public hearing. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Heather McMillan, the Project Development Director at Homeward. And I'm not sure if she's been promoted, but if not, may we please promote her? It looks like her hand is up. Great, thanks.
Now it's my turn to juggle technology, but I think we're there. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Welcome, Heather.
Thanks. It's nice to see you guys, even if it's not in person, but this is lovely. As Emily stated, I think that we were all thinking and talking about the same kind of things, and we just happened to bring Creekside to you guys to kind of illustrate the points you've been talking about as a committee, and I appreciate this opportunity. Again, I'm Heather McMillan. I'm the Housing Development Director, or the Project Development Director for Homeward. And go ahead and click forward, Emily. I'm going to let you run the slideshow. I just want to give a little context. In 2017, and I may bounce around a little bit, we worked with the city, and some of you were on council at the time and some were not, but we used a 501c3 conduit bond, and through the city, First Security Bank bought said bond. NeighborWorks Montana threw some money in, and we were able to acquire Creekside Apartments. And so just as a little context, Creekside is between here and East Missoula, right along the corridor there. A nice drone shot of the project, and it's 161 homes. We were able to buy it from a for-profit developer. It was developed in 1996. I'll get into some additional weeds as we walk through the slides, and I'll give you guys detail and context. And please raise your hand or have me clarify if I use an acronym inappropriately or something. I don't explain something in detail, because this is a pretty complicated project in a certain sense for us. Go ahead and advance, Emily. Thank you. Yep, so built in 1996, 161 homes. There's 14 buildings. There's a 15th building with a community room and leasing office and an apartment for the site manager. It's actually housing around 300 people right now. If you want to change that metric to 300 individuals, families, individuals, households, basically. There's a mix of studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedrooms. And these households are all targeted at 60% area median income and below. And that's because this was originally built using the low-income housing tax credit program in 1996, early in the program's history. And it was a 4% project at the time. Again, we can have a whole session about the nuances with that. But at that point in 1996, the deed restrictions on low-income housing tax credit projects were for 30 years. Now, when we make a commitment and request credits, we make a commitment of 46 years, just because the program has evolved and the state understands the need to maintain those homes for that period of time. And again, as I said, in 2017, we used that conduit bond to purchase the project. Go ahead and advance, Emily. So right now, at that time, when we assessed the property, it was at risk of going to market. In 3 years from now, those original 30-year restrictions are going to burn off, and then it could go to market. There's no deed restriction holding the property to affordability restrictions. There may be people with Section 8 vouchers, but they are tenant-based. There's no subsidy attached. There's no other home money or any other funds. It was purely tax credits, and that's when that will burn off those restrictions. Like catch up with my notes. So at the time, the private developer that built it was trying to be it's cost effective. We looked at we knew when we assessed it that a lot of the building materials and systems, major building systems, whole building systems, would be at the close to the end of their useful life. We had a capital needs assessment done at the time. We were aware we were going to take this project and rehabilitate it. We were requiring to hold it, preserve it, and then we knew we'd have to rehab. And this was all before COVID and new construction pricing and the fun we've had for the last 2 years. So we were keenly aware that this was going to be an issue. I did mention that at this point, when we're going to infuse tax credit equity, hopefully, we've been invited to apply, and we're hoping that we are invited or that we're awarded 9% credits in November of this year, but we won't know till then. We will commit to 46 years of affordability. But the biggest problem here is that while the CNA told us that, the capital needs assessment, we knew there'd be issues. We're seeing those right now. They are coming to fruition. Unfortunately, buildings are not built. They're not disposable, but what you choose to build with matters. And at the time, they used really efficient, cost-effective windows. They used vinyl siding. It was asphalt shingles. It was built at the lowest cost per unit that code allowed, essentially. So what we're finding now is, if you look closely at the pictures, that vinyl siding is failing. The connections, and we're in Hellgate winds. The roof is having shingles blown off. We are at the end of the useful life for the asphalt shingles. People are putting foil insulation in their windows because those windows are not designed for code as energy codes are now. It was 1996. But these are just some sample pictures of what our property management has been dealing with in conjunction with us trying to stay ahead of some of these improvements. It's also why Homeward and those who've known us for a while have said that we need to build durably up front so things last longer, and some of those needs get stretched further. It's a sustainability thing, it's an environmental thing, but it's also now that we're sitting in front of you talking about the resources that are going to be necessary to rehabilitate this, that if we had built this property and used, say, hardy siding, hardy plank, Lennox flats, or Fireweed Court was built at the same time this project was, we haven't even had to paint the project. That's how long the siding has lasted and the durability around it. Now we're talking about wholesale replacement of siding, roofing, windows, mechanical systems, etc. Go ahead and advance, Emily. Like I said, Tamarack has been working closely with us and our asset team, and we have been using there's kind of an approach. You have the have tos, need tos, and want tos, and we're all at the have to stage. And they have been basically being magicians at this point, going out and just patching the roof where they need to be and tying down the shingles. There's some structural repairs on some decks that we knew at the time, and we've been doing out of operations. Net operating income, we exhaust as much as that as possible. And we've also been we are required to put so many reserves into a project every year. Yeah, it's $300 per unit per year, which is a shadow of what it should be in reality. But we have been using those reserves, draining them down and doing the have tos to maintain and keep Creekside operational and comfortable. Let's go ahead and advance. Perfect. Unfortunately, what happens is that there's some deferred maintenance. We're not getting to the site issues. The garages and the storage units are beat up. We patch and repair best we can, but there's just some things that have been let go. And now is the time to infuse dollars into the project to upgrade those systems and to secure it for that next 46 years. Go ahead and advance, Emily. Go ahead and catch up my notes. So what we're talking about right now is what they call it at Montana Housing at the state level and in the tax credit world, twinned projects. Prior to COVID, we might have been able to this would have been a scale of a project where we just simply used 4% low-income housing tax credits. It's a non-competitive round. We could have resyndicated it. But now that costs are so high, we're looking at over $9 million worth of work for this particular project because it is 161 homes, 15 buildings, and we're talking about that wholesale replacement of roofs, siding, windows, water heaters, mechanical units, all those things that are unfortunately all kind of coming to a crown in which they're all failing very much at the same time over a 2 or 3 year period. And so what we're proposing now, and we have presented to Montana Housing in April, I think it was the option to put a 4% tax credit and a 9% tax credit together. And again, we can have a special session and talk about what that all means, but we have to legally separate them. We have to mathematically separate them, all the things. And so, but what it does is we are taking 2 of the buildings and we're requesting 9% tax credits for them, because in a 9% project, you can cover about 70 to 80% of your costs with a 9% project. And then the rest of the buildings we're proposing putting into a 4% tax credit structure. And basically they'll be Siamese twins, for lack of a better term, and work together, and we'll get the economy of scale of the rehab all at the same time. So this just gives more equity and more money for that needed rehabilitation. We may be refining it. It might be 3 buildings. It might be different buildings than what we propose, but that application, formal application to Montana Housing, and why we're here today, letting you guys know about this project, is due early August, and then we'll find out in October and November if we have been lucky enough to be awarded credits. Please go ahead and advance. Yeah, so I've kind of spent a lot of time on this, but the long-term sustainability is important. And I talk about that not just from an environmental standpoint, but from long-term sustainable operations. I think you guys have talked about it. I've not been party to these conversations, but Emily and I got caught up. And ironically, as you all were talking about this, we have strategically been focused on our portfolio. We were lucky enough to be able to use hardy siding back in the day on fireweed, and we've done the right thing, but buildings they don't last forever. And when it gets to the point where you're having to do these major replacements, that's the time in which you talk about, in the tax credit world, a resyndication. We ask for tax credits again, infuse money in, or if there's a roof that needs to be replaced in our, you can do some other financial structures potentially. And what Homer's doing is spending time on our portfolio and looking at how many projects we can aggregate together. When are these things going to come up, and kind of time are the times in which we're talking about doing rehabilitation to our own projects, in alignment with all our new projects that we're doing, and just working our portfolio out for the next 5 to 7 years and thinking long-term. And we have been for the last couple. And so Creekside is the first project that we didn't develop. We've done acquisition of affordable properties before, in conjunction with partners and on our own. But Creekside is kind of the largest scale Homeward owns, in conjunction with the city, that is coming to a point where everything just happens to be coming up, due at the same time as far as replacements. And so we feel like this is a good model project to discuss this with you all. As a community, we need to be very intentional about not reacting, but being proactive about managing our affordable portfolio, because right now, we just need new. And the assistance we get on projects like this conduit bond or a home award, that gets us set up at the beginning. But then there is a point in time, and we're getting to that, been around for a while at Homeward, and Homeward's been developing for a while, where we need to think about infusing money to maintain that affordability, because the last 2 years we already had a problem, and the last 2 years have compounded that problem. And these projects are critical. We can't lose any of them. And thank goodness we were proactive, the city and Homeward. And in 2017, when Creekside became available, it was at risk of going to market. And we were able to get that bond, borrow as much money as we possibly could to be competitive with market rate developers. And we acquired it and we preserved it. If this had happened in 2020, if it happened anytime in the last 2 years, we would never have competed, because what's happening statewide is that these projects that were purely tax credit projects, 30 years old, 2 to 3 years of compliance left, We have gone after 6 different projects around the state, and so has HRDC Bozeman, Blue Line. We have all competed against market rate developers and maxed our debt and tried to go as far as we could to acquire. And what rents could be, projected rents could be, tax credit rents, what we could afford. And we are coming short by $3 to $5 million, because what's happening is these outside investors are buying these properties knowing that they can hold it, take losses for 3 to 5 years, and then they can take it to market. And so thank goodness we preserved Creekside when we did, at a high cost, but not as high as we are now. And we can take it and fold it back into the program and reinvest in its affordability and the longer deed restrictions. So go ahead and advance there, Emily. Thank you. So again, I can spend hours talking about this. Preserving our portfolio is absolutely critical. If we get to a point where we can't get enough money to do the proper rehab, even if it's partial rehab, and then we planned additional pieces later, an option for us is to sell it on the open market, because those deed restrictions are coming off. And that's the last thing we want to do, because in reality, we're looking at 300 people being, and I would say homeless, and I say that with a straight face because there's no place for them to go. All of our units are full. All of the housing authorities units are full. And yes, we're building 400 homes, but these particular projects are absolutely critical. And I'm not sure that they could find a place to live in Montana as well, because we're seeing this happen statewide. So now's the time to have this conversation. Larger political pieces, I'm sure, and lots of things tied to this, but for today's purposes, we're just really excited we got invited to apply to Montana Housing Board of Housing for these 9% credits, because it's kind of the first piece in the puzzle to get our rehabilitation set up. So I'm here. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm clarify anything that I said. I might have glossed over things or not been clear. I'm happy to chat about any of this. And so is Emily.
Thank you for your presentation. I think Amber has her hand up for a question, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Heather. I always enjoy you coming in, and I always feel really thankful that we have so many people in our community working toward this and that understand it. Because I have, I've talked with friends that are low-income housing developers. I've talked to you, Heather. I've talked to you, Heidi. And I still kind of go, wait, what's that piece and how does that piece work? It is really complicated. And so,
yeah.
Thank you. I have a couple questions that may show that I don't understand it completely. But that's why we have people like you. So the 9% tax credit, and I know that that's what we're talking about here. I'm just kind of curious. You said that's a 70 to 80% cost recovery. What is the 4%? I'm just curious, because it sounds like we might go for that later, right?
That's a great question, and I should have said that. In a 4% structure, you're going to get probably about 40 to 45% of your total costs. So you can see why 4% are great, and you have to have scale to be able to have enough rent to cover a mortgage, because you have to have 50% of it, over 50% of it debt. And 9% is just so much more powerful and easier to manage. And so that's why the twinned projects have become a thing, is that you're not quite to the scale. And besides costs being through the roof, normally this could have just been a 4%, but bringing the two together, just while they're legally and financially separated, they're helping each other overall, if that makes sense.
That's great. May I have another question, Heidi?
Yes.
Okay. That's great. I'm just kind of curious. I feel like I always need to be reminded of the numbers in there and how they work together. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you're bringing this now. I always say that I kind of operate in this role someplace between hopefulness and fear, and sometimes I'm in the right. I don't know where I am, but I'm scared of all those people being displaced, and I'm hopeful, like I said, that we have all these people in the community working toward making sure that doesn't happen. So I'm just curious, because we were talking about kind of our earlier conversation around maintenance and what's needed in projects going forward and at a certain period of time. And it just got me thinking about how I don't understand how the tax credits, using the tax credits for maintenance, is there just a certain period of time that can happen? Or can you talk about when you
Sure.
become, am I being clear, like how we use tax credits for deferred maintenance? I don't know what my question is exactly, but
It's
if you
okay.
talk about more.
I'll start to answer, and if I go rogue, you just catch me. Okay. This has been a conversation where, so not all preservation projects are created equal. You have projects that were purely tax credit projects like Creekside that were built, and we know that that portfolio is aging. There's a pretty impressive graphic at the housing conference, and we could feel this, we knew it, but then the housing staff put together the fact that we have a portfolio in Montana that looks like this, and then we have a whole bunch of projects that are all coming to this marketplace, and then we're level out. And so the program was somewhat underutilized, and then it got utilized. So these projects, if they were built a little more durable, maybe it would take longer, but they're new construction, they were built. And unfortunately, now we need to infuse money in 30 years later for Creekside. There are other projects like HUD projects or RD projects, or that have operational subsidy, or they were built with other money that are older, that they still have their deed restrictions, but they're failing in health and they need to have this infusion. There's some projects back in the day. We have Fraser Tower in Billings that we were able to acquire and preserve, and it's made of brick, thank goodness. I mean, yes, it's complicated to do historic buildings, but I thank every day that I don't have to paint the brick or do anything like that. I'm just going to replace the roof and keep it updated. But Fraser just got an outstanding thing from HUD, this gold standard. And so it's a large scale project, and it doesn't quite need that infusion, but we're trying to calculate, when will the mechanical systems fail? When will the roof need to be replaced? And can you time, you should always be putting money in your piggy bank to save for your own roof on your house, right? And so put a little in at a time, and we try to plan that. But when you get to these major systems, we might be able to pull it off on Fraser because it's just a boiler and it's just a this, but on something built the way Creekside was built, it's like that everything's on fire. So that's just a little bit different kind of way to look at it. And so I don't know if I'm really answering your question, other than the fact that in a tax credit world, we have our original, we get an allocation and we either build it new or we acquire and rehab. I would say that's the same starting point. You should do enough rehab that it's going to last, do the rehab the right way. From that point forward, we have a relationship with our low-income housing tax credit investor for 15 years, and then they leave. But we're still obligated for another 31 years after that to own and operate the projects. And so we've been worried that, we're a small state from a tax credit allocation. We already have so much, we have only so many credits, and we have so many projects that we need to build new. We have just as many projects or more that need to be preserved. And so after that 15 years is we can re-syndicate again, but hopefully built it well enough or acquired and held it long enough and done the right rehab that you're not doing that right away. Because if every project in the state every 15 years got a new tax credit allocation, we would never build new, right? It would go too fast. So it's like, that's why durability matters and building things the right way. And so we know that the writing's on the wall. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say we need a state housing credit. If anybody wants to know more about that, we're working really hard. It sat and went dormant last year. And so we're hoping that we're going to get one. So we can kind of double our production, but it would also help with this preservation and infusion of money into projects, because tax credits, that's the most equity. That's what we like to go after. But our 9% projects aren't this big. Maybe we could just get a home allocation or affordable housing trust fund from the city if we're looking, okay, we need to replace the roof and these 25 boilers. We could craft an ask like that and not kind of add the complexity of more tax credits. And we could take that and maybe do a tax credit allocation for major rehab 40 years out or 50 years out kind of thing. Did I answer your question at all?
You did, yeah, you did answer part. I'm going to follow up with you on a couple things because there's still some pieces that I don't understand. And I would personally love to have more information about the tax credit system, because I literally cannot be reminded enough times. how it works. And I also just want to add that I'm thankful for Emily too. As I said, Heidi and Heather, I'm like, but I'm thankful for you too, Emily. I just appreciate you.
I got a little nerdy giddy after talking to Emily a couple days ago because I was like, oh my God, thank you for thinking of this stuff too. Thanks for being able to follow me. But I will say that even when we hire staff, it takes at least a year and a half before you can even remotely talk about it. So don't feel bad, but we do 101s and lunch and learns for new board members just because of their fiscal responsibility. They have to be able to keep up and know just enough. But if you guys ever want to have a session or something like that, we could definitely work with Emily on that.
That sounds great. Daniel?
Thanks. Yeah, I was just curious, you know, when you were talking about repairing of like older buildings and things, and like how we have the 30 or 35 year industry standard. I was curious, with new buildings, are we predicting that those will not need repairs for a longer period of time? Or are we expecting them to break down at a similar rate as decades old?
To
the older generation buildings.
Fair enough. I would say that it depends on how you build it, right? If you think about it, I think I said to Emily, and this is a quote from my architect, if I ever have to use vinyl siding on a project, just light me on fire, right? It's never going to last. I mean, like the screws are failing and it's ripping off the buildings right now. It degrades and falls apart. So I would say we haven't been perfect, but why we choose to use durable materials. Our proposed rehab is to use a cementitious siding like Hardy as a product, painted so it will last. We want to do metal roofing because it's Hellgate Canyon, for gosh sakes, you know, I mean, like, and the lifespan of the parts of the building that you put together it just depends on the material. So I probably have like a 50-year lifespan on a metal roof. I have a 25-year lifespan on an asphalt shingle. So while most of the time we don't ever get to do metal roofing, we're going to prioritize it here because of its location and how expensive it is to put roofs on 15 buildings. So we're going to try to do it right the first way. And we're probably going to have to compromise on a few things. But what I think is if you articulate in a new build, you know, always build the envelope the best, then windows, performance and stuff, that's kind of like second tier, and solar panels are like icing on the cake. You know, so I'm always protect the envelope. And so if you protect the envelope from moisture, have the good siding, everything will last longer. Your utility costs will be down, that kind of thing. But eventually everything wears out. And so, but you want to space the materials or this, you know, the hot water heaters or the refrigerators, you want to space that over time, not like Creekside where everything is happening at once. Like everything was 30 years. It's like, and I was like, we thought this a long time ago, but now we're physically seeing it here. So it really depends. And that's why we've been so adamant for the last 28 years of saying you have to build out of durable materials. Is to answer your question, new buildings should last longer. But I have a refrigerator in my basement that is probably 40 years old and it's fine. And I can't keep one in the real kitchen for more than 12, right? Because things aren't built the right way. So it's like, go ahead.
I'm going to interrupt real quick. So we're bumping up to the end of our committee period. And I just wanted to real quick see what Mirta's question was. And we still need to move this item forward.
I don't have a question. I was going to make the recommended motion and then just briefly
Perfect.
Comment on the motion, if I may.
Go for it.
I just wanted to thank staff and Emily and Heather. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. You have a really good way of explaining the complexities of housing development, and I appreciate that. And I think it would be really good for us to have you visit this committee and give us a one-on-one on this, or for me as a former Homeward board member, I remember being educated, but on this topic, but it's been a while, and it's always, things have changed, and I feel like it would be really good for all of us to have a better handle on this. I also wanted to comment that Homeward develops with sustainable methods, the construction, the development materials. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, and I think it shows over time with the maintenance and the times that you have to go and get more tax credits to do that maintenance. So that allows not having to use those funds allows other developments to be able to access those funds. So I definitely appreciate the mission, the vision, and the methods that are used by Homeward with the new projects. So I'm happy to put this motion on the floor and support it.
Fantastic. That is in order. And I think I know there's lots of things to say, but let's hold all those comments till our public hearing, if this motion passes, of course, on the 25th. So let's go ahead and move to a vote so we can hop into our next committee meeting.
All right. Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Contos, Contos.
I don't see him, so maybe he had to step out.
Okay. Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Cheryl. Oh, can you repeat, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Sika,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Give me just one moment. There we go. I have 8 yes, 0 no. Motion is passed.
Thank you very much. So that's our, we're at the little over our scheduled committee time. So I think we'll adjourn quickly and then I'll meet back for, I believe, land use and planning is our next committee. Is that correct?
Yes,
All right.
it is
Well,
correct.
I'll see all of your faces in that committee. All right.
Sorry
Bye,
for the delay,
everyone.
but thanks you guys. We really appreciate it. Takes a village.
Thank you.